Good afternoon once again. Let me greet you in the framework of the Youth and Child Rights Council or Issues Council under the auspices of the Human Rights Defender's Office, distinguished ministers, distinguished representative of the police of Armenia. Well, first of all, for those who are following us online, we should say that this is the International Day of Children, and that's where our council has started working. The primary session of the council was launched in the morning. We have already decided some of the priorities that are going to be resolved. Priority issues we are going to be resolving, like bullying, like inclusive education, like children and persons with disabilities, issues pertaining to youth and children as well. We have also discussed awareness raising, but most importantly, there are other goals we've been pursuing, and those are three: identify the problems that are related to youth and children, find some joint solutions, promote those solutions and support the human rights defender in what it does, and of course inform or raise awareness about the work that we're going to be doing regarding the solution to those problems. Quite symbolically, by the way, the representatives of public administration are here, specifically the Minister of Labor and Social Affairs, the Minister of Education, Science, Culture and Sports, Deputy Minister of Emergencies, Mr. David Rambada, and the Police of Armenia represented, as I've said already. I'm very sorry, but I don't know the position and the rank. Police Colonel Mr. Vartanyan is here with us. I'm very glad that such ranking representation is here today. Indeed, we are going to have the chance and the opportunity to ask questions to the policymakers and maybe also come up with our recommendations. We've held quite a significant conference on the 1st of July this year and carried out an exercise that we liked a lot. We thought it was really very effective. Traditions will persist, I'm sure. Let me also tell you that in terms of establishment of this council, we have received significant support from UNICEF, and the director of UNICEF Armenia office, Christine Weigand, is here with us today, and I'm going to give her the floor, of course, before we move to questions and answers. Ms. Weigand.
Thank you very much, Bahevzes, and good afternoon, and a warm welcome to the representatives of government who have joined us this afternoon. I would just like to, first of all, also wish everybody a very happy World Children's Day, because today is the anniversary of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which was adopted on the 20th November of 1989. So it is actually a very important occasion today that this milestone of establishing a Child and Advisory Council under the Human Rights Defender's Office and holding that first session coincides with World Children's Day. It is supporting the Human Rights Defender's Office in establishing this council and also accompanying it in the coming years is part of our priorities as a UNICEF office here in Armenia to continue this work. And it was certainly a privilege to be part of this exercise. We've been together now since Friday with this group of children and young people, and we've had many interesting discussions, and it's been an absolute privilege and joy, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Christine. Also, for those who are following us online, let me say that the council consists of 21 members represented by different regions of Armenia, different settlements, children and youth, and we've tried to be as inclusive as possible. There was an open announcement, and children and youth applied on their own and extended their desire to take part in the discussions. We've tried to provide for inclusiveness naturally, given we have involved also different social groups in the process, children from various social groups, I'd rather say. So without further ado, and without using the time of the council members, let me now announce the Q&A commencing at this moment, and of course we are going to do it the same way as we have done previously. It will be a discussion. You will raise your hands. I will register those who will be speaking. You will introduce yourself. You will mention your age, and also please tell us who you're going to be addressing your questions to, and then you'll hear the answer, and we'll move to the next question. So, if this arrangement is fine, we can proceed. Questions then. Tigran, please. Thank you. My name is Tigran Manukyan from Armavira. I'm 15 years old. I became a member of this council as all the others, and I'm a future political scientist. And I'd like to address my question to Mr. Dumanyan related to education. In fact, it's a matter of concern, and the question is the following. When the decisions at the ministry are made, do you consult psychologists? Because obviously before making any decision, you need to consult psychologists. Thank you. Doubtlessly, the decisions that may need the involvement of psychologists as experts obviously will take the opinions into account. But the sector is so large that there are decisions that do not need to be consulted with psychologists. If you tell me exactly which decisions you are talking about, I might answer more specifically. For example, the one related to examinations, admission exams apparently. And there are many students who are sociophobic, and they have problems with sitting in a large room for the admission exam. What steps have you taken in order for these students to feel convenient? Thank you. Okay, now it's clear. All right, so you see, yes, examination is obviously contributing to tension, and among all people, doesn't matter, students, postgraduate students going for their thesis defense, etc. Any such examination naturally creates some tension. Now, as regards the actions that we've taken, I can tell you one very specific action. I'm not sure if you have followed what we've been doing. Well, first of all, let me tell you that I fully share that we have problems with examinations, especially admission exams. This is a serious stress, very strong stress for our children. It's that one day, and it's obviously a fatal moment for them, and if for certain reasons they are frustrated, they are confused, embarrassed, I mean, suddenly they appear in a much intense environment compared to what they were in at school or at home. So naturally there may be some surprises negatively, of course, and that might be a fateful nature for them, obviously. So that is why since the beginning of the year we decided that we have to provide several opportunities for the exam. For example, from 2023, our graduates may participate in that examination 2 times, or can pass the exam twice, and then select the best result. Well, naturally, it would be more desirable to provide more opportunities than just 2 opportunities, but it's only a very new thing for us. So it's an issue of resource, naturally. So we will try to give more opportunities, obviously. You may know that there are different exams like TOEFL, you know yourself, so you can try again. So you can try several times, and you can try so many times till you like your results. And then you take those results to the assessment committee, but that needs resources. it's yet a very abrupt change in our perception for our students because it's a new thing. Undergoing the admission exam twice in a year and then selecting the best result. As for psychologists, I may repeat, you can rest assured that educational criteria, curricula, etc. Well, I'm very sorry for taking so long for the answer, but we're planning to hold a competition, a tender apparently for the school books, and there will be a commission that will be assessing the results, and that commission obviously has psychologists in its composition. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Minister. We can take Avetik's question, then Aren's question, and then you can answer those. I noticed your hand too. I will give you the floor as well. Avetik, please. Thank you. My question is addressed to you, Mr. Dumanyan, again. It's not a secret that almost all of your decisions are related to youth and children. And we know that some strategic programs are developed regularly and then implemented in order to improve the situation, hopefully. So the participation of the youth is obviously required. My question is, how do you involve the young people? What are the mechanisms to do that? And what are the very specific criteria that you can apply, whether that involvement, to understand whether that involvement was useful or not? Thank you, Avetik. Mr. Dumanyan, we can take Aren's question too and then answer them both. Thank you. My question is addressed to the police. To the Colonel, I'd like to understand what steps are taken by the police to improve the attitude to the police, the mentality of people, how people think about the police. Because unfortunately, and not only among the youth, there is very negative opinion about the police, unfortunately. They think negatively about the police, so what does the police do in order to present itself as a more trustworthy player in the society? Thank you. Mr. Dumanyan, okay, yes, I'll answer Avetik's question. Well, I'm not sure if you're aware, Avetik, but there is, let me try pronouncing it correctly. There is like a student council under the auspices of the minister, and like adjacent to the ministerial staff, there is a student council, and we held a session with that council at the time, and we were quite impressed. Wonderful students with wonderful ideas, very mature and purposeful, and well, I will not tell you the frequency of meetings, but we've been regularly contacting that council, and especially the most recent event took place 2 days ago on Friday. We invited the teachers for the Best Teacher Award ceremony. There were 185 applications, 34 shortlisted and granted Best Teacher category. There were other nominations too, like letters of gratitude and also some prizes for them. But the most specific part of that process was that the selection committee had a representative from that youth council, and the representatives of the council and the representatives of the ministry and the representatives of the schools which were in the commission. They evaluated the work, and quite interestingly, the assessments were quite similar. They never consulted one another. And your question, Avetik, on how effective it is, well, we think that if there was a student in the group whose assessment coincided with the assessments of the teachers, then it's already a result, a good outcome. I mean, if they were diagonally different, then we would have thought about that twice, which was not the case, fortunately. So, through our routine, we also elaborate procedures, and some of those procedures might might facilitate our communication, and obviously we consult the academia, we work with other groups of the society. However, sometimes the police has to do it, and well, how can I say? It's not accepted by most of the people, and that's the main reason why. It's always in the negative connotation. I mean, there's this stereotype in the society that the police, well, also among the minors who try to avoid the police, they don't want to talk to the police if explaining all the situation in your words. So that is why, for several years already, our service, meaning our department, and I'm from the Department of Juvenile Crime and Domestic Violence, so that service organizes consultations in the schools once or twice a year. There are meetings with the students, and Mr. Dumanyan can assert of that, because recently we had another event, and in the nearest future we are going to organize another one. So it is essentially the following, that the lesson is delivered by a police officer, just one of the ordinary lessons. So naturally, during every meeting with the students, we do not only pursue the goal of informing the youth about the laws. It's not only about making them aware of what they are responsible to do and not to do, but we also try to break that stereotype of that unreachable police that does what it wants. We're going to break that. We want to create the perception that you can cooperate with the police if it is possible. Well, we're going to somehow, let me say, extenuate that situation so that the stereotype is more malleable. So I hope I answered your question. Thank you. Mariam, you have the question, and then Samuel has the floor. Hello. I can't hear the colonel. Oh, I can't hear the minister, I'm sorry. And I can't hear the person responding. My name is Mariam. I'm from Kotaik, and my question is also addressed to Mr. Dumanyan. What do you think about non-formal education, and what may we expect in that regard? Thank you. A good question. Well, non-formal education, like what do we think about non-formal education? We think that is very important. Education, form of education. And right now, we are trying to promote the faculties and the organizers. So there are some new actions envisaged, measures to be taken, so that education is more motivating, and for the teachers, for the pedagogues, let me say, who organize non-formal education, be better motivated, let me put it this way, so that we provide for high quality. We have already adopted the educational strategy just literally days ago at the National Assembly, and for the non-formal education there are very clear approaches that have been identified. Because education being non-formal on one side pursues very specific goals on the other. We need to know what we expect from the so-called non-formal education. There are a couple of questions, very obscure at the moment. We obviously don't have answers. But it's permanently being paid attention to. And if you are interested in something peculiar, we can try answering that question too. Ultimately, extracurricular skills, I don't know, musical education, arts, sports, it's all very important. So the sector should be attractive and effective and ensure quality pedagogues. So number one issue is school establishment, formal and non-formal education, and the primary issue is to re-establish the character of the teacher herself or himself with all the methods there, so that the teachers are in the respective light of the society, in respect for their professionalism, as they are the ones to educate the future generation. It could be through formal education, through non-formal education. The approach is the same. Thank you.
My question is addressed to and the in the evening on business day. So, tens of people are homeless outside the industry in your hours when business kind of out business hours. Taking this opportunity, I would like to congratulate on the World Children's Day. I would like to thank the human rights defender for putting up this meeting in such an interesting format. I'm now very much worried because all the questions seem to be addressed to Mr. Dumanian. But now your question is very topical and crucial. The problem is common globally in underdeveloped, developing, and developed countries with different forms of manifestation. For instance, you may see a homeless person in New York. You would offer him a home and he would categorically reject it because it's their choice. They are more content and happy because they have higher freedom in the society compared to being accommodated. In some instances, the problem is more in the social domain, with lack of infrastructure, lack of housing facilities, and people have to survive as homeless until they get something. In Armenia, the problem persists. To understand the problem, we need to look into the causes of the problem of homelessness. We need to really take note of the fact that during the modern era of our history, we have gone through challenging times, collapse of the Soviet Union, the earthquake, when we lost 1/3 of our country's population, war, so social problems accumulating throughout years. To address this problem, multiple years of effort are needed. The state, represented by the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs, offer services. The services are provided on the one hand through public institutions, including elderly care centers or care centers in general, or outsourced services when the government is delegating a particular service delivery to certain institutions to, for example, deliver care to the homeless. But the scope of government effort in this is broader than just delivery of care services, and it has been reflected recently in the state budget of 2022 and also 23. Here, we have cross-cutting interfaces with the police, because when we see someone in the street, we need to dive into the reasons. What is the reason? Maybe it's labor trafficking, maybe the person was abused, maybe the person has an apartment but is left out because of family disputes, meaning that enormous social work needs to be done in this sphere. Recently, on Amirian Street, two elderly women, I approached them, I talked to them, and she would say that she had an apartment. She said that it's my protest against my family members. I have a home, I have an apartment, and it is somewhere in downtown. So for the government to really understand, for you to comprehend what is the scope of services provided by the government, it includes both services provided by public institutions plus outsourced services. Only delivery of accommodation is not a solution per se. We need to deep dive into the causes of the problem. One more question. For different cases of assault, police may intervene, but what if they were not able to pay the rent and they were forced out of their apartment? What is done by your agency to help these people? For this, globally, there is a formulation. I know that you all know English. It's called social housing. It includes also social house building. We are now designing a strategy for social housing to really find a solution. In France, for instance, there is a system in place. If it's a young family, if there is a student who is not earning enough to pay the rent, then the government provides them with social housing at a rate twice lower than the one offered on the market. It's offered to them to be provided with accommodation through different mortgage programs or other programs. For example, if someone has lost an apartment as a result of disaster, the person is given it for 10 years to live in without the right to sell it out. Like we see in Gyumri, a lot of people got apartments and then they sold it out, returning back to their temporary accommodation cottages. So there is another social housing program or model when you tell them, just go live there as a place to live, for the homeless people. There are multiple models, and in order to comprehend the models, we are designing a strategy. Our French counterpart tells us not to do the mistakes, to make the mistakes that they have done. Don't build these buildings in one specific area. They should be integrated into rural and urban areas with proper neighboring districts, with proper infrastructure available to everyone, be it wealthy, poor, student, scientist, and so on. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for this comprehensive answer. We have Georges, Hamlet, Lucie, and then Georges, please, the floor is yours. The question is addressed to Mr. Doumanyan. Mr. Minister, I'm sorry for not interpreting. Mr. George didn't want me to interpret. He wanted you to feel the discomfort he is feeling every day at an education institution when he is not provided with interpretation. We have interpretation requirement, but it is not provided to all the students. He is a student at the theater faculty, and there are 5 of them with hearing impairment who have not yet been provided with sign language interpretation, depriving them of the opportunity to get access to quality education. What can be done in this regard? Thank you. I know about the problem. It is really a problem. With the new approach, we are moving towards individual approach to inclusiveness. We are in the standards, we have some novelties included to ensure that children with impairment are fully integrated. However, I would be frank that there are specific problems. We are working towards that. I'm sorry, George, for that. We will do everything from our side for you and for us all to really get rid of that discomfort as soon as possible. Hamlet and Lucille. Thank you. I have 2 questions. The first one is addressed to the Minister of Labour and Social Affairs, Mr. Makarchan. Mr. Makarchan, in the first session of our meeting of the Council, we discussed the issue of children with disability. We know that the Ministry is taking measures to have accessible education for them. However, unfortunately, there are multiple schools as well as universities that are inaccessible for persons with disability. The second question is addressed to Mr. Doumanyan. Mr. Doumanyan, in your address, you said that there is a student council adjunct to the ministry. We know that a number of educational reforms have been undertaken. I would like to learn whether the ministry is consulting the members of the Students' Council on that, and whether the alternatives proposed by the Council are taken into consideration in the reform. Thank you for the question. It seems that it relates to the question that George asked. The Ministry of Labour and Social Affairs is dealing with employment, social security, and in addition, it has another important focus, which is the rights of persons with disability and the policy with regard to them. We are elaborating that policy. But the educational the aspects related to schools, universities is not directly under our authority. There is a clear point to it. The ministries are kind of a one body. We are working, collaborating both with the Ministry of Education, with the police, with all other agencies. So what is it that we do? We elaborate a policy as to what policy should the government have in place for persons with disability, for whose rights, to ensure maximum implementation of their rights. In 23, there will be a new draft enforced that would be called smart adjustment, and all the agencies, ministries, institutions should have smart adjustments with high level, low level, or medium level of complexity. For example, adjusting the times is a smart adjustment. Adjusting the handles, it is a smart adjustment. And there are also high-level, high-technological adjustments with various assistive devices. You know that the government is also issuing certificates whereby a person with disability may get relevant assistive devices. And these devices are different prostheses, different wheelchairs. We even want to bring in high-level technological solutions, and the war actually made us, and also different private companies, to think about this. For example, in Armenia, we didn't have prostheses for hands, but after the war, it turned out that globally there is super functional prostheses globally available, which can take a cup, and the government is now collaborating with a number of charity organizations and has spent a big amount of money to deliver these assistive devices. And following the delivery of the devices, we have another challenge because the warranty period is 5 years for these assistive devices. Who's going to ensure the maintenance? Then we contacted the Ministry of IT Industry. We told them there are startup companies, much with young people like you, and in 2 years' time they will create prototypes and they will provide maintenance for the assistive devices. The next area of our focus is policy elaboration. We have recently shared with the Parliament a protocol signed. And I believe optional. It is an optional one, and the government, the Prime Minister had his contribution to it, claiming that this standard should be adopted now. What does it mean? Different actors in the field, NGOs, advocacy organizations, will have the chance to address to UN to undertake an action vis-à-vis the countries who have joined the optional protocol with regard to accessibility of specific halls, halls and facilities. Soon we will host Eurovision, and you know the complex is not accessible for everyone. It was built back in the Soviet times when they were not so sensitive to these problems, and we need to take the steps to make the facilities more accessible. Not because we have this Eurovision hosted and we don't want to be embarrassed, but because we have a policy in place, and if somebody will fail to comply, there will be a sanction. With regard to the facilities, it's not only about the ramps. We need to implement solutions that are high intensive, highly technological or not. There is another question addressed to the Minister of Education. Yeah, let me briefly dwell on this. Mr. Makarchan, what he said, the problem, yes, persists in the schools, in universities. It's still there, but the law has, and it was at the initiation of Ms. Batoyan to address the problem, and we welcome it, and we're actually moving in that direction. Let's start from public transport. It's not only about the universities, everywhere, or here that we're in this hall. It is a new culture we have to implement in our routine, in our building codes. At every single moment, we should be asking this question: how our regular citizens should be accessing, using, and so on. It is not an easy problem. It is pretty complex, and it is a priority for the ministry, and we're moving in that direction. As regards the Students' Council, yeah, definitely. There is both a public council and a students' council adjunct to the ministry. It's not as if that we are changing everything on a daily basis. As regards education, the new standards have been already adopted and they are already being implemented. In Davos region, last year, we piloted these educational standards. And it is going on. The students are an integral part of it in reality for us to test how it works and to improve, to make the standards better. It is not every day. The changes that you see now have been discussed much earlier publicly, and they have been discussed publicly with students and not only. The standards have been discussed with many experts in the field. Yes, we love you. You are a priority for us, and we are always ready. If you have additional comments, we are really happy to take them. Even more so when we have such wonderful councils who are dedicated, committed. You have a chance to get into direct contact with us with your ideas, if need be, please. Thank you, Mr. Minister. Now I would like to let's give everyone the chance to ask the first questions, and then we will go through the second round of questions. Tigran, you have already asked a question. Thank you. Thank you. I'm Lucy Gharibian, 17 years old, from Yerevan. My question is addressed to Mr. Kolno. We're talking today about cyberbullying. I wonder how often children or their parents are applying to you on cases of cyberbullying, and do you think that their requests or reports are enough? This is my answer to the question. First, there are few cases when parents come to the police. You know, there is a cybersecurity unit under the criminal police forces, and they are mostly dealing with this sphere. There are cases. In general, not only related to bullying, but to cybersecurity, crimes against minors. We have solved cases, of course, but as to whether we have many parents coming to the police, no, that's not the case. Do they report adequately? Well, if we would have a snapshot as to how many cases there are, well, when we learn about a case, we definitely respond. As regards the general snapshot as to what's going out there, how to put it, it's difficult to comment. There should be maybe more monitoring going on to figure out what we have and to what extent they are trying to solve the cases, to find the perpetrators and so on. Arman? Hello, I am Arman Shamerian from Artsakh. As we have a representative from the Ministry of Emergencies, can we ask a question about school shelters? Are they being renovated? Are there schools that do not have shelters for emergencies or hiding places? Thank you, Arman. Before you ask the question, I had this feeling. Imagine you go to an admission exam and you are not asked any question. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? However, it didn't work. You are asking a very important question, dear Arman. Given our context, this is a very important question. However, it is important globally as well, irrespective of the level of risk. Yes, there are schools equipped with emergency shelters to get refuge, but still there are schools as well as kindergartens that where shelters need renovation, and depending on the position or the building status, it's also sometimes a need to build a new shelter from scratch. We are working towards that. It is also very important for us to apply a standard approach. For instance, all the shelters built or repaired in schools should be built or repaired based on a common standard. The policy is in place, and we have international partner organizations with whom the ministry is working to, especially with regard to the borderline communities, to address that. In particular, in the coming future, in 2 borderline villages with no such facilities, we will build 2 emergency quarters. It is done jointly with local government authorities. We do needs assessment and then do repair if need be. And if it is not possible to renovate, we build from scratch. Marussia, you have the right to question. Hello. I thank you for giving me the floor to ask a question. My question is addressed to the Colonel. Is it true that a child, if abused or is trafficked, the child does not have the right to file a report to the police without an adult accompanying them? Marcia, my answer is as follows. Irrespective whether you are a minor or an adult, you can come to the police. Of course, the police, in case of a minor, for any particular case, will also talk to the legal representative. The legal representative can be the parent or caregiver, for instance, but sometimes the harassment or abuse might be committed by that particular individual. In such cases, for instance, we include the psychologist according to the new penal code, as well as a teacher. If there was a violence or assault or harassment against a minor, they may come to the police. I don't see any problem with that. If need be, to get a legal registration, after that the police may then also talk to the caregiver authority as a legal representative of the minor. Okay, thank you. We have opportunities for 2 more questions according to the planned timeline. We have Hasmik and Zenfira. I'm sorry, the next questions will be left to the next time. Dear government officials, it means that you need to really talk more to the members of our council. I would suggest to put up another event. Yes, we will follow up on this and put up another event. For today, let us just go to the last 2 questions, because we know that you are also very busy. First of all, I would like to greet everyone. I'm Hasmik, 17, from Vayadzor. As my colleague Lucille said, there is one of the biggest problems among the children and youth is bullying in its various forms. In my opinion, prevention of bullying is conditional also upon involvement of the Ministry of Education, Science, Culture and Sport, and the police. I would like to understand whether there are any initiatives that would be conducive of maybe reduction of bullying. Mike. I would like actually to request you to put your questions in a more clear way, not so abstract. What phenomenon, what is the case? Can you just elaborate? I'm a school student. I often encounter almost all forms of bullying. I have seen almost all of them. And it has not been talked about adequately for the children as well as school administration to get to know what bullying is, in fact. I would expect from you, and my subjective opinion is that there should be more frequent talks about bullying, facilitated by visits of the police or facilitated by psychologists, and my colleagues would confirm this. Mr. Minister, I would like to give you a little bit background of our discussions. For instance, there is discrimination in school, classroom, or university based on a particular trait of a child. For instance, and I know of cases when being a displaced child from Artsakh has been a subject of targeting a child. And the teachers, the school psychologists should be more actively engaged. What is your vision of what are additional measures? Children were sharing cases when similar discussions were turning into jokes, into fun discussions, meaning that it was reducing the risk or importance of the problem. You know what? In general, the problem as such is it's apparent that our approach should be really extremely negative. It is unnecessary to talk about that. It is a serious problem if they take note of such a case within the scope of our remit, and I don't know, the police will react also. There will be really very rough reaction and feedback to that. In terms of quality, we don't have such. Maybe there are such forums, and I believe there are such cases, if confirmed by the HRD. As regards the number of such cases, we will definitely condemn it. Such forums, teachers will be fired if they do so. Thank you, Mr. Minister. Let me inform you that at Council we have decided, and we will prepare a report on the status of bullying, and we will, of course, share the findings with you. Mr. Makarchan, you wanted to react. Since this topic is relevant for our sphere of activity as well, I would like to react to it as a historian. This is not a novelty, this is not a local phenomenon. The humanity started to speak about bullying back in the 16th and 18th century, imagine that. And forms of bullying, unfortunately, are present in Armenia as well as globally, and in schools as well. it means that there are direct and indirect forms of bullying. The word bullying bara means that somebody who likes fighting, who likes to beat someone. It is pretty common in middle school when somebody in the class some group of students in class decide that they are not going to interact with another student in class, they are not going to make jokes with them. We have to talk about this. I have seen several small pieces of research stating that there are cases of bullying in Armenian schools, but it is not called bullying as such in the same sense as it is defined in other countries, for example, Scandinavian countries, and where there are legal provisions prohibiting it. It is also a matter of indifference when you encounter violence against someone or assault against someone, and it might be a direct assault or it might be a violence or abuse in form of unfairness. In old Greek police, somebody was beating someone for an X reason. The third person was looking at that situation. Who would be condemned in that case, charged with? The person who was indifferent was charged with a crime because he was indifferent towards the actions of that other person violating the rules of coexistence. Oftentimes we can see such phenomena and we can just tell, oh, you shouldn't do it, and just move on without having an understanding what serious psychological problems it may entail. I believe this is an important comment. We had already discussed it earlier. And the last question, Zamfira, please. Hello. In fact, I had a question to all of our guests, but it should be addressed to at least two of them. First of all, to the Minister of Education, Science, Sports and Culture, a few questions. Children who are dropped out of education, it is pretty topical and serious. Last year, there was a regulation adopted with regard to the dropout. Have you done any monitoring, and have you seen whether implementation of the regulation has changed anything in our context? And then we have also done field work in 6 villages with Yazidi population, and Yazidi students at high school did not know about that there are vocational education institutions in Armenia, were not provided with career orientation. They didn't know about the admission examination procedures. I believe that the problem is also at the school level. What does the ministry do to provide career orientation to school students and to ensure continuity of education? And one more aspect related to the national context. Unfortunately, I'm representing Yazidis. We have some reflections, some episodes about ethnic minorities living in our country, but there is no clear information that will help us to get to know people around us. And the teachers who teach us, sometimes they don't know the specificities of their students in terms of ethnicity, religion, language. The new education standards and within the scope of new actions to be implemented, do you have anything in that direction? The issue of national minorities, it is in our focus, especially in relation to our Yazidi community. One of our MPs asked a question. Well, you know, the communities should also be helping us in this regard. For example, to protect the language, the Yazidi language. It is very important. This is what they request. They request government-funded scholarships. Well, we have training providers that are private companies with appropriate license providing training for in-service teachers. As regards the Yazidi language, I think they did not apply. The communities also should support us, tell us how to do, what to do. Secondly, there are also some ethnic specificities. Early marriage, for instance. It is not contributing to ensuring the continuity of education. These are serious problems. We stand ready to sit down, to discuss, to support, but let's be clear, the community should also be guiding us, should be showing us the solution as they see, so that for the government to shift the approach to action. I would like to add that there were trainees, but since there are very few people who go to university, there is also lack of teachers. These two are interlinked. And I would like to indicate that no matter irrespective of early marriages, we do have system-wide problems that contribute to Yazidi children's dropout rates. And another aspect to it, I would like to get your insight about whether you monitor the implementation of the regulation on student dropout. Yeah, it is a very important question. We have services, the police, the services, our ministry, the National Security Service, local governments. We all just stay reassured. We all deal with this on a daily basis. There are some data we are digging into. Pretty serious number of cases have already been clarified. Still, we have some cases that are not clarified, but it's really not worth to discuss it now at the moment. But we will definitely dive into it. We are dealing with it at highest level. And one more comment. Today we talked about this in HMIATIN. Last year, if I'm not mistaken, in one of the neighboring villages, they initiated theatrical performance about post-war, and our Yazidi citizens, I have seen that performance, and you know, there was a woman playing the role. It was a serious problem for her even to go up the stage. But she has really gone through it. She has broken the stereotype. And it was a fantastic performance about the 44-day war performed on stage after the war. There is progress in that regard. My question is more about teachers being less informed or uninformed. Sometimes teachers are not adequately informed of the national specificities of their students, and it creates problems. I would like to ask a question also to the Minister of Labour and Social Affairs regarding the issuance of the category of disability. You talked about smart adjustment, but we do have a problem of smart accessibility to get their disability status. In the rural communities, I have met a lot of kids who do have apparent disability, but they do not have the certificate of having such a disability. The problem is because the parents do not have the skills or the chances to get that certification for their children and often certificate for their children. It often is about resources to travel from one settlement to another to undergo specific examinations and checks. But also, unfortunately, we encounter cases or situations when the primary healthcare facilities do not promote, do not help, do not support, do not refer the parents to be able to get that disability category, and the children's rights in this sense are violated because they do not have access to the services provided by the government. Thank you, Zamfira. I believe your questions are echoing all the discussions we have had earlier. Let me react because we're now being late from our next meeting. Just a portion of your question about career orientation. Why, Mr. Dumanian? I am reacting to it because we are doing it jointly with the Ministry of Education. Career orientation, in fact, it is very important at school level for us, and we are now designing a strategy on labor and on employment and labor, and the strategy encompasses an important principle relevant for all cycles of life. Starting from school life, we need to have the employment in our focus till when a person gets adult. There is so-called active growing in getting old in an active mode. We are unfortunately such a society, and we have to create conditions for employment. We are an aging society. In this regard, professional or career orientation is crucial. Together with the Ministry of Education, we are implementing career orientation clubs in the schools. It has been fully implemented in Davos region. The content is being designed jointly with the Ministry of Education. Yerevan, Gyumri, Shirak will be the next targets of implementation, meaning that in high school, they will be told about potential career paths and the demand for different careers. It will also be a guidance for them. The world is changing rapidly. We are now in the post-industrial civilization, and artificial intelligence, you may have heard about it a lot recently, will move a number of professions in 5 or 6 years' time. Artificial intelligence will make those specializations non-competitive. They will still be there, but they won't be competitive. The employers will not be interested in such professions because one technology, one instrument will be fulfilling that function fully. And we will have to tell our pupils that even if you like this profession so much, still maybe it is not worth spending 4 or 5 times digging into it, because in 5 or 6 years, maybe you will have to get another profile. Therefore, you will have to get some informal additional training and make your life more interesting. Or you may regret that you have learned for 4 or 5 years in that field of study. That's why this career orientation will be implemented throughout the country for the students to be informed. There is an interesting movie where Fronzek plays, telling that I want to explain to them what their future career will be. The next one is a very much debated one. In particular, the problem started to be articulated in the post-war context, when more than 1,400 young men had found themselves in different categories of disability, first, second, and third, and then there is the reassessment period when they qualify as third category. It's likely that they get third category, move from 2 to 3. It means that they have positive dynamics in their health status. But with the second category, they get more privileges, more priorities in terms of access to healthcare, and they don't want to actually get improvement. Another category. I am asking them a question. Aren't you happy that you have improvement in your health status? Is it because if it is about having access to healthcare, let's talk from that perspective. The disability category cannot be considered as a privilege to have an access to a specific service. You have asked a number of questions. There were very dangerous formulations. It is not based on a political decision. It is based on assessment performed by experts, clinicians, physicians. It's not my entitlement to do it or somebody else's to decide whether they should be given that category or not. In Armenia, we have 49 integrated social service delivery social service centers, and these integrated social services deliver and serve Armenia all through serve the whole country. There is no specific problem with accessibility, be it in a remote village or somewhere near Yerevan. All the services are operational. Earlier, they were called social offices, and now the reforms have been implemented, and it is now renamed into integrated social centers, delivering one window service. They go to polyclinic, they undergo the tests and examinations. They come to us for assessment. We determine the functionality, whether the disease that they have now has disrupted their functionality. If the function has been disrupted, there are specific internationally recognized standards enabling the medics, physicians, experts to determine whether they have a disability or not. If the citizen does not agree, they may appeal twice and then go to court. There were a few cases when they have gone through the court over the past of 2 years, 2 years ago, and the category was re-established by court. But in parallel, we are also undertaking a fundamental reform with a new system of assessing the functions of an individual. It will be put in place from February 1, 2023. All those people who will come to get their category, they will go through this filter. Not about the health record, but it will be based on functionality. Whether the that disease is or has had an impact on their functions. If there is a family who is not able to afford it, to afford their children to get the exam, it has nothing to do with that, you know. You know that children, minors till 18 years of age, are provided with healthcare services free of charge, and there is also a reference issued to them, and then they undergo social and physical examinations. Sometimes parents do not know about this. Well, let's help them through the municipalities, because municipalities have their own officers working in this regard. Yeah, you are now at the point that I wanted to ask. Maybe the problem starts at the municipality levels, and maybe we should start and implement proper supervision there, because during the initial phase of life, maybe the disability was not vivid in a child. In 2 or 3 years' time, it became more apparent, and now they are at school and without a category. There are also stereotypes, especially for girls. Parents, do not go to take their children for examination. It's more, they do it more for boys, because there is the matter of army. My question is as follows: what do you do as a state? What do we do as a state to address it? Recently, we will invite all the community or servants jointly with the Ministry of Territorial Administration and Infrastructure to provide them training, so that they have this full understanding of them being servants within their local community, and to identify the problems and to voice them out. Among boys, there is higher level of recognized disability compared to girls. It cannot. The difference is enormous. Why? Because when they come to their military examination, it's mandatory. For girls, there is nothing mandatory, and the problems mandatory. The problems are identified later. The next question about dropout. The dropout rate includes children whose parents do not take them to school to hide the disabilities that they have. Yes, I agree with these national specificities. It has nothing to do with national specificities, with ethnic specificities. It is, in case of dropouts, there is a share of children who are accounted, and who have some disability or impairment. It has been identified before they go to school, and the parents don't want that to be known. Sanfira, then you can later continue your conversation. Let's not turn it into a dialogue because I didn't give an opportunity to other council members to ask their questions. I am sorry about that. I tried to give at least everyone one time an opportunity to ask at least one question. We will regularly seek opportunities to have further discussions. I would like to express special thanks to the government officials, to the Colonel for this. Thank you for your time and for participating in this conversation openly and sincerely. And thank you for the information that you have shared. It is very useful. I would like to thank the members of the Council. We have a last point on our agenda to share a cake and to take a photo in front of our stand. And please, the floor is yours, dear Mr. Minister. Thank you. You know, we have said that we are doing reforms, we are putting up strategies. The reform strategies and reports are often implemented with support and thanks to the efforts of our international partners. I would like to thank to Ms. Christina Maikon for different sector-specific reforms, for their reaction to these reforms and for joint implementation. Thank you. Thank you. We will have the cake in the next room. Please, thank you.